Okay, we're going to do some hand stitches now. The first stitch is a hemming stitch, and it's called a catch stitch. And I'm going to start by threading my needle and making that knot where we twist, roll, and pull back. And then I'm going to pull that to the opposite end so that I have some of my thread that is single, and then up closer to my needle I have doubled. I'm going to keep pulling my needle and extending that as I stitch. Okay, so that is my my thread. Now, to get my fabric ready, okay, this is a catch stitch. So all we need to do is we need to turn the edge of the fabric up. Okay, it's going to be along our hem, and I do need to hold that in place with some pins. Okay, this size sample is probably only about 3 pins, maybe about 1 inch apart. Works pretty well. Now the catch stitch, what's important to remember, if you're right-handed, of course all these are done right-handed, you're going to keep the point of the needle facing to the left, always, when you put it in, when you take the stitch, when you go back to take the next stitch. And we're going to start by hiding that knot down in between that folded layer of fabric. So I've pulled it in from that back side. Okay, the knot is back there, it's caught there, and I have that pulled up like this now. Now the catch stitch is easy. We're going to be making little X's. Alright, but I'm going to come up here, and right at the very top of where my fabric folded up, I'm going to take an itty bitty little stitch, picking up, maybe 1 or 2 threads from the underneath fabric, and go ahead and pull that. Then I'm going to come back down here again, about the same distance down where I came out originally from hiding my knot. And I'm going to take a little stitch here. Okay, I can go ahead and take that pin out. I want to make sure that I haven't gone through to the outside of the outer fabric. Okay, that actually looks like I have. So I'm going to come back, take that out, and just make sure I'm going through the single layer, top layer only, and pull that through. And what you see is I'm going to just continue. Okay, I'm going to take teeny tiny little stitch up in the air, not really in the air, in the back fabric, and we want to make sure that our thread doesn't get caught all around our pins. That always happens. And it will look like this. Okay, I'm going to keep going across. I'm just going to keep stitching here for a minute so that you can see this. So you take a stitch down here, pull it through, and then right up at the upper edge. Again, just take that itty bitty stitch, because the stitch you take up here is going to show from the outside. Now obviously if we are using matching thread like we would be, it's not going to show nearly as much as what this black is going to show, but I'll flip this over here in a minute and show you what this does look like on the other side. Okay, so again, you notice every time I take a stitch, I'm moving over to the right about 1/4 inch, and I'm also keeping the point of my needle facing to the left as I pull it through. Again, come over about 1/4 inch. Again, I'm about the same distance down. Take a small stitch, doesn't have to be as teeny tiny as the upper one, because I'm going through only this top layer here, which is not going to show from the outside. And then back up to the top here. Pick up again just 1 or 2 stitches. The least amount the better, least amount the less that's going to show on the outside. Okay, and see, we're forming these little X's, these little crisscrosses, and we're catching the fabric, so this is why it's called the catch stitch. And we'll take another one down here, and then we'll flip it over and see what it's looking like from the other side. I get a hold of my needle there. Okay, if we turn it over and look very carefully, Okay, I see a couple little black dots. If those were pink thread, probably wouldn't see much at all. I've taken smaller stitches as I came over this way, and those are barely even noticeable in black. Alright, so to see how you finish this up, okay, I'm going to take another couple stitches just to get to the end. Again, my needle's pointing to the left. Come down here. Okay, and I want my last stitch to be up on this part of the garment again, so that really holds it in place. So I take that teeny tiny little stitch. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay this down so that you can see how I'm tying my knot. Get my other thread from my pin cushion out of the way here. And notice I still have the single layer of thread. I haven't let it double up, so I keep pulling as I go. And I'm going to go around my needle, and so I'm like tying a big loop. But I'm going to hold that down with my fingernail, or press my finger against it, so that as I pull it through, that knot ends up right at the surface of my fabric. You can see that really closely. That knot is right up at that very edge. Okay, I'm going to make a couple knots, just so that they're big enough it doesn't pull through the fabric. Again, hold it down, pull it through, make sure you can see that. Okay, maybe one more time. Alright, and then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go back between my layers of fabric. Okay, I'm not going through the front, just between the layers, and just like I hid the knot to start with, I'm going to pull this through, and this knot is going to kind of duck under the edge there a little bit and be hidden from our view. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up on this thread a little bit tight as I snip, and then what happens is the tail of the thread goes right back underneath between those two layers, and you don't even see the tail of the thread anymore. Okay, and this is your hemming stitch called the catch stitch. That would be the back side or the inside of your garment, and this would be the outside.